George Szamuely. George, welcome back to the show. I could think of no one better to talk to on these important turns in the war this weekend. Let me start with what may or may not turn out to be the portentous proximate cause of a change of tactics in Moscow, namely the assassination of a significant figure in a cafe, as I said, falling for the old Trojan horse technique of being handed a statuette with a bomb inside it. How significant is that, and what you think Moscow will be thinking now about how to respond?
Well, it's hard to say whether it will be significant. We've had, of course, terrorist incidents already in this war. I mean, we had the assassination of Daria Dugina a few months ago, and that didn't lead to any dramatic escalation. So it's hard to know whether this will cause any change in tactics on the part of Russia. I mean, I think the most significant event in the near future will be the upcoming offensive, and I'm sure it's coming, of the Ukrainian armed forces. I think the Americans and the Ukrainians are determined on mounting an offensive. Quite where it'll take place, whether it'll be Zaporozhye or whether it'll be towards Donetsk, it's not clear, but I think a lot is going to hang on that. If this offensive fails, then there may well be a push for some sort of a negotiated outcome for the first time on the part of the Americans. If it succeeds, then I think there will be very serious repercussions in Moscow.
Now, let's talk about the fall of Bakhmut in that context. This is an operation that seems to have been more or less entirely mounted by the Wagner private military company, which, if I'm right about that, is a remarkable situation. The might of NATO, with all its weapons and its trainers and so on, beaten by a private army of convicts who secured their release from prison on condition that they serve in this particular army. How significant would the fall of Bakhmut be in the context that you just described?
Well, it's hard to know exactly whether it will be significant, because it may be that the Ukrainian forces will leave Bakhmut and dig in a few miles westward. So we really don't know whether it's that significant, whether it's a feint, and that the real issue will be this offensive that the Americans are putting a great deal of emphasis on. I think that why the Americans are setting such a high store on this upcoming offensive is that they want to show the Russians that they cannot win this war. If they can show that you cannot win this war, we're going to be here in perpetuity. We're going to just keep fighting and bleeding you and resisting you forever. That will force Russia to the negotiating table. I don't think that's going to work, but I think that's the American thinking. So I think that rather than Bakhmut, the ultimate fate of this war will be decided in this upcoming offensive.
And when will it be upcoming? When do you expect it, George? What kind of forces do you expect the Ukrainians to be able to field? And where have they got them? Because they've been sustaining massive losses and dragooning young boys and old men on the streets. Where have they got these forces from, if they have them?
Well, I think they've got obviously some forces because they, unlike Russia, have mounted a full mobilization. Russia has only partially mobilized. So the Ukrainians have full mobilization. They're mobilizing pretty much everyone from the age of 18 to 60. There are also, without question, mercenaries fighting alongside the Ukrainian forces. What I think they're going to try and do is this mountain offensive on Zaporozhye and to cut the land bridge to Crimea. The land bridge to Crimea is pretty much Russia's one outstanding achievement of this operation that they launched last February. So if they can cut that this is at least the American thinking, then they will have accomplished something, and then they will have put some sort of pressure on Russia, and then America can say, "Hey, we have won this war." If they fail and they expend a great deal of resources, then I think there may be some pressure on, and Zelensky has suggested this, that hey, we can't go on with this. We're just losing too many men. It's getting harder and harder to mobilize. There's more and more protests against this enforced conscription, and that they may not be able to continue. So I think, whichever way it goes, I think this is going to decide the fate of this war, this upcoming offensive.
Now, you used a form of words earlier that intrigued me. If this offensive succeeds, it would have serious consequences in Moscow. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think that there will then be pressure within the Russian leadership to go for full mobilization and to push for a war economy. In other words, I mean, they've already said, Russian leaders have said, well, this is World War II. I mean, we're basically up against it. We've got the whole world, at least we've got the world, the industrial powerhouses of the world are united against us. They want to destroy us. They want to do to us what the Nazi war machine tried to do to us. So we have to respond in the way that the USSR responded in 1941, basically full mobilization and to go for a war economy. I think that will be the decision of the Russian leadership. Now, whether that will lead to the removal of Putin, or whether Putin himself will change policy, but they will realize that this way of fighting, this continuation of a special military operation, they still refer to it as a special military operation, isn't working because they're fighting the whole of NATO and NATO's assorted allies around the world. South Korea, Japan, Australia, everyone. You've got the whole lot is now mobilized against Russia. So to win this war, you can't go on with this limited military operation. You have to really mobilize, and a war economy. I think that if that's I think there'll be the conclusion of the Russian leaders if this offensive if they succeed in cutting off the land bridge.
What were the main reasons why Russia decided to fight this war with one hand behind its back? For example, when we launched our war against Iraq, we completely destroyed Baghdad. Within hours, actually, we had caused the death of 40 or 50,000 people in Baghdad. We set fire to the whole of the city. We knocked out every single power plant in Iraq. We did all that within hours of the invasion of Iraq. Why did Russia not do that in relation to Ukraine?
It's very hard to know because we don't yet know what was the thinking within the Russian leadership when they launched this. It's quite possible that they were calculating that there will be coups in various Ukrainian cities, particularly Kiev, that will remove Zelensky and various city leaders in Kharkov, in Kherson, obviously in Kiev, and that they will be able to achieve their ends without any serious fighting. And I think that their move towards Kiev would suggest that they were expecting some kind of a coup within Kiev, the overthrow of the Zelensky regime. It didn't happen. I think when that didn't happen, Russia then moved to a different strategy, which was to focus on the Donbass. It was very, very odd. I mean, I've never heard of mounting a military operation without knocking out all of the military capabilities of the other side right away? Why not bomb the airfields, all the air defense systems, the power stations, the infrastructure? You destroy all of that, then you send in your infantry. It's very odd that Russia didn't do it. That's why I tend to think that they have some intelligence suggesting that there might be an overthrow of the government, and then they could just simply come to some amicable agreement. I mean, to a certain extent, this happened in Kherson. There was a change of power. It was taken peacefully. So there was a pro-Russian group that took power in Kherson, and the Russians took that over, that at least temporarily. So that would suggest that that this is how the Russians were thinking, that they wouldn't need to mount a major military offensive to win this.
Now, finally, let's turn west for a moment, George. The Prime Minister, you're in Budapest, the Prime Minister of Hungary has been more and more outspoken, hence he wasn't invited to the Democracy Forum organized by the United States, more and more outspoken. And today he said that that NATO had destroyed both the economies and the moral purpose of the European Union by insisting, as it had, on full cooperation, turning the European Union countries into vassals of the United States. Is Orban's analysis finding an echo anywhere else in Western Europe?
Not so far that I can see. You're absolutely right, George. I mean, he's becoming more and more outspoken and saying something that is obvious, which was that this is a project entirely conceived and executed by the United States. It serves no European interest whatsoever. It's destroying the European economies. It's leading to the possibility of an all-out world war with Russia. And the Americans are just sitting pretty. The problem is that Hungary is a very small country, and without any allies, his voice is limited. I mean, there are few individuals in Europe who echo him, but they have no power. I mean, the president of Croatia has sounded similar notes to Orban's, but the presidency of Croatia is a purely ceremonial position. Same goes with the president of the Czech Republic. Again, he said sensible things, but again, the presidency of the Czech Republic is ceremonial. So at the moment, I don't see any echo, but it could change. I mean, we've seen strikes in Germany. We've seen protest after protest in France. Strikes in the UK. Who knows? There may at some point, it reach a critical mass, and people say enough already. We don't want your stinking war. What are we getting out of it? So, who knows? It could happen. But at the moment, Orban is out there by himself.
George Szamuely, thank you very much indeed for joining us